Hi, this is Justin with Black Module Studio, bringing you another Unity tutorial. This one is going to be on player terrain modification. So basically, we're going to make a script that will allow you to edit the terrain as the player, like with the mouse, during runtime. So we'll go and get started. First thing we want to do is go ahead and go to Game Object, 3D Object, and we're going to create our terrain. It's going to make our new terrain and our terrain in here. So we're going to want to make sure our camera, let's go ahead and put it, I don't know why it's over there, somewhere just kind of in the middle-ish, just so that when we hit play, we're right over the terrain. Alright, so now that we have that, we'll go ahead and create a new C# script. We're going to call it Modify Terrain. And let's go ahead and throw that onto our terrain object so we have it there. And open it up. Alright, so in Visual Studio or whatever your IDE is, once you have it open up, first thing we're going to want to do is get a reference to that terrain object. So we'll say public terrain, and the rest of the variables we're just going to leave private for now, just because they don't really need to be accessed outside of this class. So what we're going to want is we're going to want an integer for the height map, width, and then another one for the height map, height. And that's essentially just the X and Z for the terrain object. Alright, then we're going to want a two-dimensional array of floats, and that is going to be the heights, and that's the heights data. So like basically how high an XZ point is on the y-axis. Alright, and then lastly we're going to want a cached copy of our terrain data that we will get from our public terrain object. That way we don't have to keep accessing this terrain object. So in start, first thing we're going to want to do is get that cached copy of our terrain data. So we will say terrain data equals terrain data. And then we're going to want to also get a couple of these variables set. So we'll get our height map width. That's going to be our terrain data dot height map width. And then our height map height, similarly, is going to be terrain data dot height map height. And then lastly, we're going to want to get our heights array. That's going to be terrain data dot get heights. And then we're going to, as you can see, this takes an X base, Y base, width, and height. So we're just going to start at 0, 0, and we're going to go grab the whole thing. So we're going to grab it from 0, 0 to the height map width and height. So height map width, and then height map height. And that's all we really need to do in start. So then what we're going to want to do is, since we're doing this at runtime, we're just going to do an update, and we're just going to do it very basic and simple. That way you can easily translate it to however you need it in your game. So we're just going to go based off of left and right mouse clicks. So we're going to do that in update. So we'll just say if input.get mouse button 0, which is going to be a left click. And then we're also going to check for the right click. So that's going to be if input get mouse button 1. Should be left and right click. Oops. So so this is going to be to raise terrain, and this is going to be to lower the terrain. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get actually I can do this out here. We're going to want a Raycast Hit object. We'll call it hit, and we're also going to want a ray. Say ray equals camera dot main dot screen point to ray, and we're going to pass it the current mouse position. So what that's going to do is that's going to create an array that goes from wherever the mouse is at on screen coordinates, it's going to go from the camera to wherever the mouse is at on screen coordinates within the within the game world. So it's just going to draw an array there. That way, basically, we can use it to actually raycast and see what we're hitting. So within raised terrain, within this raised terrain section, when we're left clicking, we'll do that first. What we're going to want to do is we're going to actually check we're going to do a raycast. So we're going to say if physics.raycast, and we're going to pass in our ray and then an out value of hit. So that's going to, we're passing in the ray and then our raycast hit object, and it's going to alter the hit within, so when we use hit afterwards, it's going to have data from this that we're going to need. So because of that, we're going to call a function that we will create momentarily called raised terrain, and we're going to pass in hit.point, which is a vector 3, and that's a point in world coordinates where wherever we clicked, essentially. Similarly, for lower terrain, we're going to do a raycast, pass in ray, and then out hit, and then we're just going to do the same thing, but lower terrain. Lower terrain, and pass in hit.point. That's honestly about it. Yeah, that's actually everything we need for the update function. So nice and simple. Now we're going to want to go ahead and create our raise and lower terrain functions. So they're not going to return anything, so we can do private void raise terrain. We're going to pass in a vector 3. We'll call it a point. And then the same thing for lower terrain. Actually, I'm just going to copy raise terrain once we finish it. It'll be quicker that way. So what we need to do is we need to get our mouse X and our mouse Z. And essentially what that is we're taking the point where we hit, and we're going to divide it by the total size of the terrain, which is different than the height map width and height. The terrain data size is in Unity units, whereas the height map width and height is the actual resolution of the terrain. So they're two different things. And so we kind of need to normalize it within Unity's terrain system. So to do that, we will say mouse X equals, we need to cast this to an integer. We're going to do point.x, that's where it hit. We're going to divide it by the terrain data dot size.x. And then we're going to multiply that by our height map width. We're going to do the same thing for mouse Z, except on the Z. And with height map height. So now that we have that, we're going to want to create another two-dimensional array of floats. The reason we're doing a two-dimensional array is just to make it easy, so we don't, because eventually we have to pass a two-dimensional array into a setHeights function anyways. So we're just going to be editing one point at a time, but you'll be able to easily see how this could be translated to using a larger two-dimensional array, so that you would potentially actually be you could like create brushes out of essentially like square brush, circle brush, things like that. But we're just going to use a single point. So we'll create another two-dimensional float array. We'll call it modified heights. We'll say they equals new float 1 1. So put that there, and then we're going to create y. That's going to be the height value, or the y value, like how tall we want it to be. At the point that we're clicking. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set it to heights, which is that's the two-dimensional array for the entire terrain. We're going to set it to heights mouse X mouse Z. Since we normalize these to fit within the terrain, that will automatically between 0 and then height map width or height. Let's see, what should we do? Okay, so after we've got the current height, now we're going to want to actually raise that height. So we're just going to say y plus equals, let's see, we'll say, let's actually create a value for this. This could be another public value. We'll say public float, we'll call it strength, I guess. We're going to start to 0.01 for starters, and then we can adjust that. So we'll say strength, and then let's go ahead and let me think. Actually, since this is actually being called in update, we're actually going to want to multiply by time.delta time. Alright, so anyways, now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to actually check that to make sure that we don't exceed the height of our terrain. And let me actually check what that is. So if we go to terrain, and then, is it in here? Okay, yeah. So our terrain width and terrain length, that's actually the, what do we call it? The terrain data, size X and Z, and then size Y would actually be height right here, which is set to 600. So we're going to actually check if Y is greater than terrain data.size.y, which is that 600 value. And if it is, we're just going to set it equal to it, because we don't want to go greater. I think it might actually lock it in place. If we try to set Y to 700, it might just cap it at 600 anyways. But just in case, we're just gonna, not worry about. We're gonna take care of it ourselves. So the next thing we want to do is we want to take our modified heights array, and at 0, 0, we're gonna want to set that equal to Y, and then we're gonna want to do heights mouse X, mouse Z, and we're going to set that equal to Y as well. And then we're going to say terrain data dot set heights, and this is actually going to set the actual heights values. And we're going to say mouse X, mouse Z, modified heights. So that's going to start at the location we clicked, and then it's going to pass that in. Now, if you increase the size of this modified heights, and you want where you click to be at the center, you're going to have to actually do a little bit more math to figure out, because we're starting it at where we click. So you're going to want to actually, so like let's say if you're doing a square that's 10 by 10, you'd actually do mouse X minus 5 and mouse Z minus 5, because that'd be half of your 10 by 10. That way it would be centered around where you're clicking. So that's all there is to the raised terrain. Lower terrain is going to be extremely similar. There might be a way to not have two functions doing basically the same thing, but there are some differences in here. First of which, we're going to do minus equals on that. Secondly, we're going to check if it's less than 0, and if it is, we're going to set it to 0. Honestly, that's about the only difference. So we could combine, this section into a function and this section into a function and then call this separately. Yeah. But anyways. So let's see. Now, I think that's all we need to do actually within code. So we're going to go in here and we're going to check. Let's go and minimize it. We're going to go ahead and drag our terrain into here so we have access to it. Now we have that strength value if we want to adjust it. So now we can go and left click and you can see it raising. And if I hold right click, we're lowering it. And so yeah, so it works. So if we want to raise this crazy high, you can see that it'll spike up much faster, but also lower much closer. If we increase the strength a ridiculous amount, we could actually throw some flags in there to limit that the size of this, or like with the custom inspector or something if we wanted to do that. But that's really dependent on what you want. Maybe you want to have it change drastically. I don't know why, but so anyways, yeah. So that's about it. Should work pretty well. and yeah, it's not something that you want to do like a lot in your game. Like, I mean, you are editing the terrain, so it's a little bit performance intensive, but it's not crazy. It's not going to break your game. But just keep it in mind. A lot of games, like if I were to use this in a game, I would likely not have it be like something that is in like a multiplayer game where every player is doing this every single frame, because that's going to kill it. But if it's something that's just done occasionally, like even if it's as often as I don't know, a couple times a second, that's still much less than 60 times a second every single frame like we're doing it in update right now. So just keep in mind the frequency that you use this. But other than that, it should be good. So thanks for watching, and check out some of our other tutorials, and feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy this, and leave a comment if you have any issues with this or some suggestions for other videos, things that you'd be interested in learning, and just let me know what you think. Alright, thanks. Bye.